building on Fountain, and he said, "You see how it's on an angle?"
Ready? Ready?
What?
Ready?
Not my meeting, it's yours. I got stuff to do.
Don't make me laugh.
Oh, who's doing the pledge?
Stephen.
None of my business.
Stephen.
You do whatever you want to do. And I can't wait to come to Vegas to your birthday.
Good evening. Today is Monday, December 9th, 2024, and the meeting of the Public Safety Commission has been called to order. We begin to acknowledge that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and the Gabrielino Kits people. Next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and this evening, Commissioner Post will lead us in the pledge. Please stand. Commission Secretary, may I get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Blau,
Aye.
Commissioner Hallman,
Here.
Commissioner Nickel,
Here.
Commissioner Post,
Here.
Chair Aramian.
Here.
Please note that Commissioner Freiberg and Vice Chair Harrison are absent this meeting, and we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Item 4 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda for this evening. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda for December 9th, 2024?
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Yes, tonight staff is making the recommendation for the Commission to approve the agenda with one change in terms of moving item 8E, which is the report from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department monthly report, to 8A as the first item to the beginning of the agenda, and the remainder will follow in order.
Great, thank you.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Madam Secretary, may I please have a roll call?
Commissioner Blau,
Aye.
Commissioner Hallman,
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel,
Aye.
Commissioner Post,
Aye.
Chair Aramian.
Aye.
The agenda is approved.
Great, thank you. Item 5 on our agenda for this evening is the approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes from November 12th, 2024?
There are no changes.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
May I please get a roll call, Commission Secretary?
Commissioner Blau,
Aye.
Commissioner Hallman,
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel,
Aye.
Commissioner Post,
Aye.
Chair Aramian.
Aye.
The minutes are approved.
Great. All right, moving on along on our agenda this evening, item 6 is public comments. Commissioner Secretary, do we have any speakers at this time?
Yes, we have one speaker on Zoom, Adam Darvish. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you will have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Adam, if you could hear us, please go ahead.
Oh, great. Sorry that I couldn't hear you if you were calling me earlier. I'm Adam Darvish, a resident, but also a liaison to Public Safety Commission from Transportation and Mobility Commission. So I'm just attending for the first time, and I'll listen into your agenda. I'm excited to see WeHo Target Vision Zero speed limit reductions on the agenda. Obviously, that's something that came through our commission at Transportation and Mobility. And also we'll be reporting on some of the key agenda items from our commission. the other item that we focused on was autonomous vehicles and the whole process that's attached to it. Those are the two main ones, but thank you for accepting me as your liaison. And I know some of you I know from previous commissions, so I'm excited to see you all. And that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam. And that is all the public comments.
Great, thank you. Moving along, item 7, unfinished business. There is no unfinished business on the agenda for this evening. Moving on to item 8A, the report from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department monthly report. The LA County Sheriff's Department will provide us for a report on the month of November.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for accommodating the change in the agenda. Appreciate it. Want to bring up a couple of the stats for November. The Part 1 crimes have reduced from 14%. We had 164 Part 1 crimes. Just to put it in context, we usually get between 180 to 220 Part 1 crimes, and that was prior to COVID 2020. So just to have kind of put things in context. So it's a great thing to have the Part 1 crimes reduced. And then just a breakdown of the Part 1 crimes, West District is, again, the highest in percentages for the Part 1 crimes, which is with 57%. And those are, as you can see from your notes, as part of the pickpocketing that have been hit, again, mainly in the Rainbow District. And those are the numbers that kind of increase the numbers to 57%. City Center was 21%, and then East Side 22%, which was the breakdown of the Part 1 crimes. Part 2 crimes, again, West Side 41%, City Center 24%, and East Side 35%. Residential burgs have increased 14% from last month, but the overall burglaries, when you look at the burglaries, have decreased 17%. So it doesn't, I mean, the numbers say that they have decreased, but those that have become victims of the residential burgs, it's not low enough. But just know that we continue to do saturations patrol in the residential areas. Our saturated teams or conduct foot beats as well, and if they see anybody in the residential area, they contact them, give them the tips on making sure that they are well lit areas, that if they do leave and if they're going on vacation, just to make sure that you have somebody you trust keep an eye on your property. Those are the things that we try to push out to our communities as far as like what should they do for residentials. Also, we have a holiday saturation patrol two-man woman car that is going to be concentrating in the retail business area during the high peak of shopping during this month of December. And again, they're going to be reminding our community members if they see something in their car, if they see the individual, they're going to remind them not to leave packages visible in their vehicles. And one thing, as Jamie Araki, who is our public social media liaison, and Sergeant Duran has made this flyer that they put on social media. We left some up front, which is, again, just tips on what should they look for shopping. Just, again, the basic things that we say is basic, but we don't think about it. Like when you go shopping and you have a few bags, then you're going to go back to your car and put them in your car. But unfortunately, people follow you and wait for that to happen. So we say if you are going to do that, I mean, I know it's difficult to find a parking spot, but we recommend that you move your car if you're going to do that. And if you have a vehicle that does not have a trunk, we don't recommend that happens because, unfortunately, and not just us, in our neighboring cities, LAPD, Beverly Hills, that's one of the highest crimes that occurs during these holidays because we get, we want to go shopping and we're very giving to our friends and family, but we go back to our cars and stow away our gifts. We just say to be cautious of that. One of the things to report, we had our virtual town hall meeting on December 3rd to cover the technology initiatives that are be coming down hopefully in the first quarter of 2025, which is the drone program, the real-time watch center, and the live cameras. So we had approximately 39 individuals on Zoom, so it was a great success. We had good questions. We have a next one coming up December 17th, and it'll be here at Council Chambers. That will be here again. Anybody who wants to have any questions about the technology package that we're going to be, hopefully the beginning, not hopefully, it'll be the first quarter of January. We're in the process of remodeling the office. That's going to be the real-time watch. So that's in the process of doing that. And again, just things that we want to make sure, just remember the shopping and being out, be vigilant, be aware of your surroundings. Don't fall into the scams of people calling saying that, your package was delivered here, we made a mistake. You just keep an eye. If you're expecting a package, call the individual company to see, because you'll get a text message and say, oh, we delivered in the wrong place, so we need you to enter your information so that we can re-deliver it because we're having an issue with it. Don't fall for those scams because they're all over. One of the other things, don't use your debit card. Those are one of the things that are easily accessible. I mean, just different things that you can do. And if you look at our social media, we try to post some of that information, but also the Sheriff's Department's website has tons of information also for any safety tips during the holidays. Also, I know the Commissioner Nickel, you sent out an email in regards to an update to the accident that occurred on December 10th. We know that November 15th, the charges were filed with the DA, and those charges were as follows. They filed murder 187A, reckless driving on a highway causing bodily injury, the misdemeanor section, and then battery upon a firefighter. So there was an incident where the individual battered a firefighter. But those are the charges that were filed. But as you know, that on an unrelated incident, the individual is in the hospital. So we'll just have to wait, and I can't get into details as to what occurred or what his condition is, but we know that unrelated to that specific incident, he was involved in an accident, and he's currently in a local hospital. And as far as the factors of whether he was under the influence, it is positive that it came back with some traces of something being under the influence, but I can't say specifically what because it'll be part of the case. But yes, we know that charges were filed, and it's up to the DA's office now to continue with that. And then I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Great. Do any commissioners have any comments at this time? Commissioner Nickel?
Thank you, Lieutenant Lapkin, for answering some questions about the accident that resulted in a death on October 10th. So to be clear, again, the person who was charged was driving recklessly on Spalding and hit someone at the intersection of Fountain. When you say that the charge was reckless, was it speeding? Was it running a red light? Can you say?
In order to do reckless, you have to have a multiple traffic violations. I don't have exactly what they were, but it had to be multiple violations. So without having that in front of me, but there is, in order to have any type of reckless driving, you have to have multiple moving violations.
Got it. And there was an issue of under the influence. I understand that you cannot say specifics. And again, I'm just bringing this up because there's been a lot of talk about how this could have been stopped by having bike lanes on Fountain. This has been something that's been brought up. So a person under the influence driving recklessly on Spalding would not have been stopped from causing this accident had there been bike lanes on Fountain. I am just stating this as it became a rather contentious thing the last few months. The other thing is, thank you for mentioning the burglaries. Is there any update as far as the burglaries that have been happening over on the west side?
Thank you for the reminder. I did have that. And unfortunately, we weren't able to identify anybody. I mean, those 3 individual residential burglaries were back to back, and it seemed to be that it was the same individuals, but nothing was left thus far that we can identify the individuals. So the detectives are constantly looking. They're if any information comes out on a different burglary, that we have the same, physical descriptions. And like I said, we have a very good rapport with our other agencies, so we do communicate. Like if somebody arrested somebody that was, let's say Beverly Hills, for example, arrested somebody that was known for residential burglaries, they'll send the information to our crime analysts, and then they'll send it to the detectives to see if they have the same modus operandi, meaning the same way that they've entered, the same physical description. So if at any point there is a burglary that occurred in a different city, they do contact us, and we do the same in return. So if they do, and if something does come up, then absolutely we'll identify them, but we do work together with the other agencies. But as of now, we don't have anything.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other commissioners have comments? Commissioner Post?
Hi. Thank you, Lieutenant Lapkin. Appreciated everyone that was at the drone meeting webinar last week. And just two questions out of that I had been listening to. Was the 9,500 that was approved for the renovations, was that in addition to the initial approval of the 750,000 for all of the programs?
Yes, that's to retrofit the office in the sense of the bringing in the cables, not necessarily the equipment, but we have to change doors, add windows, doing a backup battery because that one has to be on a backup battery. So that's in addition to the money that was approved sometime in the summer.
Thank you. The other one, there was some questions from a citizen around unit orders and how that is kind of created and if they have access to those. And I think we've talked about this in the past, and Captain Mulder's kind of talked to us about unit orders. Is there kind of a list or book of unit orders generally that is publicly available or available to us to better understand kind of what those things are in terms of policies generally? I know specifically as the drone program, but just to help folks understand kind of how that process is behind the scenes.
So unit orders are specific to each station. So each station, we can have a unit order that is not necessarily a unit order, let's say Lost Hills. So those are not normally public, but our policy and procedures manuals that are policies are public. Okay. You can go to the Sheriff's Department website and look at those. But if there's something that you're looking for specifically, I mean, unit orders can range from for this one specifically, it's a unit order for the drone program because it's not department-wide. And because it's a pilot program, we have our own unit orders. And again, those are subject to change specifically for this program if the need arises. But the regular unit orders, they're not public, no.
And then last question, separate from that. I know back in July we had a officer-involved shooting, and I believe the initial reports for those came out, but I believe the county or some other agency does a fuller report. Has there been any update there, or just what is the timeline normally even for that report to come out?
On an average, I couldn't even tell you. I want to say it's a year, a timeline, but it does go to. You have a litany of agencies that look at it from the get-go. So initially, it's our internal affairs that look at it to see if there's any violation of policy. Then we have our civilian oversight. Then we have our DOJ that review all that. And then, and prior to that, they check with the DA to see if there's any criminal, charges that they look at to see if there's any criminal charges to be charged for the deputy. And I know that they're in the process. I mean, we don't handle any of that. So average, I want to say it's about a year, but there's other circumstances that can change that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from commissioners?
I have a comment, please,
Commissioner
Chair.
Blau?
Thank you. Just going off of what Commissioner Post just mentioned, a question popped up for me, Lieutenant Lapkin. Those unit orders for our station, is there any reason why we wouldn't be able to publicly request those?
I mean, I'm sure you can do a public request and see what they are, but they're not public because, again, it's specific to each station.
Right.
Whereas the manuals are department-wide.
Certainly, and that's why it's not published
Correct.
regularly. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, but it's not to say that they're unavailable.
Correct.
Okay, necessarily. That might be one that, okay, understood.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that.
No problem.
Any other commissioner comments? I have one quick question, Lieutenant. Thank you for your presentation. And being that we have a new DA now that was sworn in, is there anything that's going to change in regards to how our Sheriff's Department does arrests or do arrests, knowing that our previous district attorney was very lenient, for lack of better terms? and our new DA, I'm hoping will be more strict in regards to charges being filed. Has a memo been sent out from the County of LA, or have you seen charges being filed against individuals that you guys arrest rather than being cited and just released?
I know that the zero bail has not changed, so that's when we do cite and release. But as far as us changing what we do to arrest, that's not going to change. We'll continue to arrest the individuals that need to be arrested, and if it falls under the cite and release, then we do that. That has not changed. But I know that on the DA's office, they're changing their protocols of what they file and they don't. But we don't change what we arrest, what we don't arrest. We just continue to arrest because we can't, unfortunately. And it's going to sound bad, but we can't be bothered what the DA does because we continue to do our job. So if the DA fails to file, that's not on us. We just continue. If they need to be arrested and if they don't file charges, then, and that's what happens. But the zero bail is still continuing the same.
Right. Thank you. Commissioner Post?
Yeah, off that, I actually asked this question, I think, last meeting as well, not directly to the DA, but after Prop 36 that passed. I think whoever was speaking last meeting had said that there was kind of normally a legislative analyst that passes those down. Has any guidance on Prop 36 been passed down to you all yet?
Not yet. So it's usually that we do, our legislative unit breaks down what they would say new orders to say, okay, from this point on, whatever Prop 36 did, then we'll act upon. So like whether they're changing from infraction misdemeanors, whatever it was, and they send us directive. It takes a little while for that to come down to us, but we know that our legislative unit are the ones that do that to us.
Yeah, and I bring that up just because I think there has been obviously concerns around retail theft, and I know that was part of that law. The bigger concern on my side that I hope we can avoid is on the drug side. I know there's some refelonization of certain drug offenses, and so just making sure that we're always responding in a compassionate care first manner, I think is great, which we already do with Healthcare in Action and all of our alternative response programs. So I think just making sure that West Hollywood is a leader and making sure that we're utilizing those alternative responses, especially as it relates to drug activity, I think is just something to keep in mind as we continue to see what might change with Prop 36. Absolutely,
and again, once it comes down, from our legislative view, then we'll know what the department's view on how we're going to handle that. But, we always try to deal with all of them with care and compassion and try to get them all the help that they need. I mean, like if you could see, a lot of the time they don't want the help because they are in a crisis, but, it's the squeaky wheel. One day they're going to get the care that they need.
Great. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Secretary, do we have any public speakers at this time?
We have no public speakers at this time.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful holiday if I don't see you before.
The next item on our agenda, the Public Safety Commission will receive an update on the West Hollywood Target Vision Zero Action Plan. Welcome.
One second, we're just going to try to get the slides up. All right. Good evening, commissioners. My name is David Fenn. I'm a senior planner in our long-range planning division here. And I have a brief update on our efforts to reduce speed limits associated with the Vision Zero program. So if you don't mind, I'll just go through the presentation that was attached to the slides, and we can get into any questions or comments from you all. But really, we're just looking for your feedback so that we can incorporate that in our recommendation to the City Council, which we're hoping to take in January.
Not to interrupt you, David, can you speak closer in your mic, please, so we could all hear you?
Apologies. Is that better?
much better. Thank you.
All right, so the background on this was back in December of 2023, the City Council adopted the Vision Zero Action Plan. I think at that time I came to this commission to get your feedback on the plan overall. One of the recommendations within the plan specifically recommended lowering speed limits on city arterials and local streets. When we returned to council in March of 2024, I can give them an update on our implementation. They directed staff to prepare for speed limit reductions that were enabled by a state law known as AB 43. Prior to the passage of that law, we were fairly limited in the way that we can set speed limits. Cities' hands were pretty tied in terms of following the 85th percentile and some wonky rules coming from Sacramento. But as of June of this year, that law from Assemblymember Laura Friedman went into effect, and it provides some new tools for cities in setting more context-appropriate speed limits. So we don't really need to get into the details of the speed limits, of this flow chart, but essentially what AB 43 does is it gives you a couple of categories for different speed limit reductions. So for example, speed limits are set by surveying the speeds that vehicles are actually traveling on the roadway. You do some calculations to get the 85th percentile speed of what cars are traveling on, and in the past that was the speed limit. There was some flexibility that you could round down by 5 miles per hour from what the 85th percentile of vehicles were doing. AB 43 allows you to additionally round down in some cases. It allows you to set new defaults for different categories as well. And a lot of those are based off of designations of those roadways as either business activity districts, senior zones is another one, as well as safety corridors based on where you're having your highest intensity crashes, the highest concentration of crashes, I should say. So why are we doing this? There's a lot of data that points to the impact that speed has on crash severity. The stats and the chart here come from the National Association of City Transportation Officials. And there's some pretty powerful numbers in here. A person hit by a car traveling at 35 miles an hour is 5 times more likely to die than a person hit by a car traveling at 20 miles per hour. Or reducing speeds by only 1 mile per hour can result in a 17% decrease in fatalities. So that's some pretty powerful stats in terms of what even a modest reduction in speeds could do for safety on city roadways. So you all may remember these charts from the overall plan that came to you a while back. The map at the top is the city's Vision Zero high injury network. So those are the corridors that we identified in the plan where most of the severe and fatal crashes were occurring. The map below, those are the actual crash locations, but they are kind of generalized into those corridors in the plan. And one thing that's fairly clear is that the streets that have the highest speed limits now are also the streets where most of those fatal and severe crashes are happening. And I don't think that should be a surprise to anyone. If you travel in West Hollywood, you know that the crashes happen on Fountain, they happen on Santa Monica, they happen on La Cienega, et cetera. So in doing this analysis, we looked at, based on the new provisions of the law, where does that enable us to make speed limit reductions? And there's some considerations with that. For example, what is the speed limit on the adjacent portions of the roadway in Beverly Hills or Los Angeles? What is the existing speed limit there? Has it been recently lowered already? We don't want to be kind of confusing people or creating a speed trap for someone coming across from Beverly Hills. Suddenly the speed limit drops 15 miles per hour. That wouldn't hold up in court. That would be challenged as a speed trap. So what we're looking at is really a series of modest, defensible reductions that could have a big impact on safety without, really being surprising to motorists. So yeah, the biggest one is all of the city's roadways that are currently signed at 35 miles per hour, which is our current highest speed limit in the city, we're recommending would be lowered to 30 miles per hour. That's Santa Monica, Beverly, Melrose, Fountain, portions of Fountain. And then some roadways that are currently signed at 30 miles per hour would be lowered to 25 miles per hour. So that's, Holloway, some of the streets in the design district like Robertson. And then this state law actually also provides a provision for narrow local streets to just set the default for those to 20 miles per hour rather than 25. So that's the streets in blue on the map. They're mostly on the west side. The other residential streets in the city are generally wider, so that same provision doesn't apply. That's not to say that we couldn't in the future also lower speeds on other streets. There's just, in order to do that, it requires some focused engineering and traffic studies that the city would have to take on kind of individual streets one at a time, which may be something that we pursue in the future, but the focus of this effort was to try to do something at fairly large scale across a lot of the city that we could implement fairly quickly and start seeing benefits, rather than getting bogged down in a series of focused engineering and traffic studies. Some considerations: Doheny Boulevard is a special case because it's half in the city of Beverly Hills. So anything we do there has to be coordinated with them. Their staff have so far indicated openness to working with us on that, and I hear we'll be embarking on a similar effort to reduce speeds with this new authority from the state anyways. This map is the same as the last one, but it layers in some context, because some people looked at the first map and wondered, well, what about the other half of Santa Monica, or what about the other half of Fountain? In terms of Fairfax and the western portion of Fountain, those were recently reduced from 35 to 30 within, I can't remember the exact timeline, but in the last year or so. And the eastern part of Santa Monica Boulevard has been 30 miles per hour for several years. So in both of those cases, our proposed reductions would actually make the speed limits more consistent across the corridor, instead of having a faster speed limit on the west side of Santa Monica and the east side of Fountain than the other portions of those streets. It would just be consistent throughout all of West Hollywood. And then this map layers in where the adjacent portions of those same streets where we're proposing reductions would actually match existing speed limits in Los Angeles or Beverly Hills that are already lower than ours. So on Beverly, we would be bringing our speeds down to the same speed limit that Beverly Hills already has. On La Cienega, the same is true with Los Angeles. On Sunset, we'd be coming down to the same speed as Los Angeles, and et cetera, on those other corridors identified. There's a few areas where our proposed reductions would put us lower than the adjacent city. The other half of Sunset, Beverly Hills, is at 35, so we would be 5 miles per hour lower than them for now. They may pursue lowering their speed limits as well, as I mentioned. But a 5 mile per hour reduction is considered, a 5 mile per hour difference between jurisdictions is seen as acceptable. And as I mentioned, both cities are looking at lowering their speed limits over time as well on various corridors. So they may, if we move ours down, they may follow in relatively short order for Beverly Hills, and probably will take longer in Los Angeles because they have a lot more streets to work through. This map shows kind of the different rationales under the law for the reductions. So I mentioned setting these lower speed limits requires the designation of certain corridor types under state law by the city council. So in the design district, those streets that I mentioned were going from 30 to 25. That requires the council to designate those as business activity districts, which makes sense. Those are streets that are lined with businesses. San Vicente, Melrose, La Cienega, Crescent Heights, and La Brea, those would require the council to designate those as high pedestrian or bicycle activity districts. And that designation is, the name of the designation state law is a little bit misleading because it doesn't necessarily, the presence of a bike lane or not on the streets can be a factor in that designation, but can also just be, if there are land uses along those corridors that generate a lot of pedestrians, that can warrant that distinction. And in both of those streets most of those streets have, concentration of schools and parks and shopping centers and the like, which are also criteria for pedestrian and bicycle activity districts. And then the other major designation we're looking at is the designation of safety corridors under state law, and that has to do with identifying where they have to represent 20% of the total crashes in your historic crash data within your jurisdiction, and based on our Vision Zero analysis, we are able to make that determination that those streets would qualify. And the final category is kind of a special case on Vista Gardner, where there's one block right now that has a higher speed limit than the rest of the street in the city. So the state allows you to do a gap closure where you just make things consistent, which we think will actually make things just less confusing for motorists, because the way things stand now, they may not see the one sign that is important for that block, and they may not have even perceived that it was different. In terms of implementation costs, this is relatively modest compared to a lot of the things the city does. It's essentially the cost of replacing signs, the labor for removing and replacing signs, and additional labor to remove painted roadway markings where the speed limit is actually painted on the roadway. And that's something we would include in our request to council to request those funds. In terms of next steps, as I mentioned, we're looking to bring this to the City Council. Right now, the target meeting is January 21st. Assuming Council wants to move forward, it'll come back to Council again for a second reading of some of the municipal code changes and the ordinances that will be needed to actually make these changes. There'll be some, and then assuming all that is passed, there'd be coordination needed with the cities of Beverly Hills and Los Angeles, as well as our friends in the Sheriff Department, and they've been briefed on what we're looking at here as well. Obviously, the actual time it takes to install the updated signage, and that would all be paired with an education and enforcement campaign coordinated with City Communications and the Sheriff. One thing I should mention is there's once speed limits are changed, there's kind of a grace period where you're not issuing tickets based on the new speed limits until the new signs have been up for a certain duration, and that would all be included in the communication campaign. The last bullet here is, as I mentioned at the start, there are some additional reductions that might be possible in the future with additional kind of focus studies. The law provides provisions for additional reductions in school zones. There's a new category of kind of senior zones, areas with concentrations of land uses serving vulnerable communities like seniors. With think of your assisted living communities and that sort of thing, where a lower speed limit may be warranted. Other wider local streets, reductions could be pursued on those through the city's traffic calming program potentially. And then obviously if we make major changes to a roadway, say, for example, the reconstruction of Melrose, the city is required to conduct new speed surveys every, I believe it's 5 years. And if we make major changes to a roadway, that might actually bring down the 85th percentile speed, which is kind of the starting point for this sort of analysis. So infrastructure changes that make it, that change the way people drive on our roads could also result in lower speed limits in the future. So that's all I have in terms of slides, but anxious to hear from you all, any questions or comments and feedback that we can include in our report to the City Council. Thank you.
Great, thank you, David. I have a quick question. In your presentation, you have, alleyway 15, speed limit, business district, local road, senior zone. And I'm just talking in regards to Santa Monica Boulevard from La Brea to Doheny. In my eyes, in my thinking, I consider that entire roadway from La Brea to Doheny to be considered a business district, a local road. How is the determination made of what is the business district considered and what is your local road considered?
So the categories are a little bit pedantic in that they kind of exist in state law as categories where we can pursue these additional avenues to speed limit reductions. The council designating something a business activity district for the purposes of speed limit reductions is not to say that another corridor is not necessarily a business district in terms of a street with businesses on it, as we would all understand it. there are a lot of limits on where we can use these different categories and how much of them we can use, and they have different flexibilities. So one of the reasons that we didn't designate more of the city, or why we're not recommending designating more of the city a business activity district, is that that tool actually automatically results in certain default speed limits. It works differently than the other one. So if something is a safety corridor, that allows us to round down the speed limit by 5 miles per hour from whatever it is now. Whereas if we designate something a business activity district, it defaults to 25 miles per hour. So we wouldn't necessarily want to make Santa Monica Boulevard a business activity district in terms of how it's defined in the speed limit law, because that would lower Santa Monica lower than we think is appropriate. So right now our recommendation is to bring Santa Monica down from 35 to 30. If we were to designate it a business activity district, kind of the quirks of the way that state law is set up would result in Santa Monica being lowered all the way down to 25, which we don't think is appropriate for kind of our main street and the street that our transit buses and other things operate on.
And Santa Monica Boulevard, I believe, is 30 miles per hour from La Brea to La Cienega, and then it goes to 35 from La Cienega going west, correct? So why is it 30 miles an hour from La Brea to La Cienega, and then it increases to 35 miles an hour from La Cienega going west currently?
Why is it currently set as different? I assume it's because prior to AB 43, the speed limits were set essentially just based off of the 85th percentile speed. And if you think about Santa Monica on the east side, it's a much narrower street, so drivers may currently drive slower on that portion, which would have resulted in that lower existing speed limit. But our proposal is to bring the western portion down to match the east side for consistency and clarity as well as safety.
Because I live on the east side, and it takes me in the morning just to drive 12 blocks, 30 minutes sometimes. And that's with 30 miles per hour speed limit. So now if we're going to reduce the speed limit to 25, how much longer will it take for residents to cross town? Because traffic does, during the weekdays, it does take some time to go from the east side to the west side. So now we're reducing it from 30 to 25, and it's going to back up traffic. Has there been studies done for traffic studies to see how this will affect residents and the community?
So I should clarify two things. That the speed limit on Santa Monica on the east side, we're not proposing changes. We're proposing maintaining it at 30, just bringing the west side down to match the east side. The other consideration, we understand that at some times of the day, lowering the speed limit will make it take longer to get from one side of the city than the other. But that will not be rush hour where people are stuck in traffic, because as you're describing, taking 30 minutes to get across the city, it's not possible to drive anywhere close to the speed limit at rush hour now. This really comes into play, in the middle of the day or late at night when the roads are relatively empty, that people are even able to come anywhere close to the speed limits on our major streets.
So I envision West Hollywood being a very traffic place right now, because with lanes being taken away on Fountain for bike lanes, reducing the speed limit 5 miles, it's going to be so much traffic in the city, and I really hope that City Council considers that, and all the studies have been done, because you're reducing traffic on Fountain for a bike lane, and we're reducing the speed limit on Santa Monica Boulevard. I just hope that the proper studies are done and the right decision is made. And my final question is, if you could elaborate on what a senior zone is.
Right, so a senior zone is first of all, we're not proposing any of them at this time. It's something we could look at in the future, but it's one of the provisions of the new state law. Essentially, you can think of them as similar to a school zone, where the state allows you to set specific speed limits around a school because children may be present who require a little bit more protection, and you have a lower speed limit when they're present. The idea with senior zones is there may be areas of different cities where you have a concentration of uses that attract seniors who are perhaps a similarly vulnerable population in terms of they don't move as quickly, they may have issues with sight or other things where they may not be able to maneuver out of the way of vehicles, for example. So the city council, in the future, if we were to come back to them with some recommendations on those, could designate a street where we have a concentration of assisted living facilities, or perhaps near the senior center in Plummer Park. It's essentially another tool from the state that allows us to set lower speed limits in areas where there are a lot of seniors in the vicinity.
Thank you. Commissioner Post? Commissioner Blau?
Thank you. David, thank you for your great presentation. Just a few comments, because I know that you're seeking commentary here. I think by and large, I definitely think that this is executing on the Target Vision Zero plan in terms of reducing speed limits. One question is, as part of the Target Vision Zero plan in conjunction, I think it's a good follow-on with this, are there other traffic calming measures that are planned as part of this? Because I know that we already have issues on some of these corridors, Sunset, Fountain, Santa Monica, at different areas of the day, actually enforcing speed limits. So I don't know if part of that looks at, or if there's plans to look at other additional traffic calming measures that might not necessarily even require the person power, which is mandated by state law to enforce speeding limits presently.
So the answer is yes. There are other traffic calming measures, both envisioned by the plan and being implemented now. It's actually another division at the city, the engineering division, that implements the physical infrastructure changes. I know, for example, they've been directed to look at some right turn on red restrictions at various intersections to improve safety by reducing conflicts with pedestrians. There's a few additional crosswalks that they're looking at, either in roadway warning lights or kind of pedestrian activated signals to improve crossings. I think there's one on Sunset that they're looking at, but I wouldn't want to speak. Okay. I can't remember that list off the top of my head, but there are others on several of these corridors that Public Works is looking into in terms of traffic calming. And I know the city is on the record our Community and Legislative Affairs Division is working to try to get us included in the state speed camera pilot program, which several other cities in the west side have attempted to join. I think only Malibu has done so successfully.
Beverly Hills too.
Los Angeles and Long Beach have been part of it already, as well as I think Glendale possibly. But yeah, we'll be working with our state representatives to try to get that authority, because that would obviously be a way to enforce speeding without the need for deputies to be present.
Great, thank you. And then the last thing that I was looking at is I was trying to imagine, as I was kind of looking at the presented to vision with how's all the speed limits going to interact. At first I was thinking Holloway's reduction was maybe unnecessary, but then thinking about an ethos where we're trying to direct cars to utilize kind of the fastest and biggest roads for them, it definitely makes sense to change that or to keep it different from a reduced Sunset. But along that same vein, I'm wondering if the designation of Melrose right now, specifically between San Vicente and La Cienega, I know that there was all that construction that went there. Do you know if the 85th percentile speed measurement, which I think informed this, do you know if that was pre or post all of the construction that happens over there, or happened over there?
I would have to go back and check, but I'm maybe 75% sure that the survey was before that.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, because that's one of the things that I might wonder if that's like maybe not even high enough. But obviously, I know that there's limitations in there, just with all the crosswalks and all the businesses right there, as the street's also been redeveloped. Plus, I looked at California DOT designation for the streets over there, and on the Los Angeles side of Melrose, after it leaves West Hollywood, it goes from being a what was the designation? I can tell you. It goes from being an other principal artillery to a minor artillery, at least on the east side, and then obviously on the west side it hits Santa Monica and Beverly Hills, so it kind of has a little bit of a weird zone there, but food for thought. Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Nickel?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, David, for your presentation. The presentation does say, and you mentioned the developing and launching an education and enforcement campaign, which I think will be key to this, for people to be aware of the fact that these changes have occurred. Would that include any kind of signage that may stand out in a different way, maybe larger, especially, I mean, if we're going to have to replace the signs anyway, so that people are aware? If people have lived here for years, you're used to speeds being a certain number.
So the size of signs is also governed by state law. There's some discretion in terms of like a certain situations where larger ones are possible. One thing we've looked at in the past, and certainly the ones that do exist in the city already in areas that are changing would need to be replaced, is speed feedback signs. So the one I can think of off the top of my head is there's several on Fountain, where if you're driving over the existing speed limit, it flashes at you and says, your speed is such and such, right below the speed limit. So certainly those would have to be updated, and that's the kind of thing that if there's problems with compliance, we can look at rolling out more widely as well.
Which would make sense, so that people are aware of the fact that this is now the speed and that they're going past that. And enforcement is key. I've mentioned many times a New York Times article talking about the success of Vision Zero in New York City, and one of the main things, of course, was enforcement. And including, I mean, they mentioned red light cameras, speed cameras. If we could get in on that program, would really make a difference. And then I just you mentioned on Fountain that we did reduce the speed within the last year at Fairfax West by 5 miles. And since Fountain has been a lot in the news and there have been a number of accidents, it seems to me that this is an opportunity to really dig into the numbers and see if that speed reduction has had a positive impact as far as the number of accidents and the severity of accidents in that area, and it will help inform what we do with the rest of Fountain. Just a suggestion.
Thanks for that. We're definitely keeping an eye on the Fountain numbers in particular, in light of the the other projects that you've all mentioned.
Great, thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Hallman?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. So Fountain is currently at 35.
The eastern portion of Fountain from Fairfax East is currently 35.
So from La Brea, starting at La Brea.
From La Brea west to Fairfax is currently 35, and then from Fairfax west to La Cienega is currently 30.
So then from La Brea to Fairfax, is that going to be reduced to 30?
Yes. Well, that's the proposal from staff.
That's the proposal. And you had mentioned, a big concern of mine is La Brea and Fountain. There have been numerous accidents there. One business in particular has been hit 7 times by vehicles. I know it's not your division. You talked about there are other studies that are going on that might deal with turn signal lights, correct? But is this happening at tandem? Do we have an idea of when some of those measures could be presented to council? Because to me, it doesn't seem like one's going to work without the other.
So I can't give you a precise date. I can tell you I know engineering is working on right turn on red restrictions. I think there's some other intersection improvements. I can't be certain if it's that exact intersection, but if it's okay with you, I can follow up with the appropriate staff and work through your liaisons to give you an update on those.
Yeah, thank you. That would be great. And when is this being presented to council again?
The speed limit item, we're targeting January 21st.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Commission Secretary, do we have any public speakers at this time?
Yes, we have 2 public speakers. The first one is Kelly Pilarski. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
3 minutes, oh wow, all right. Hi, my name's Kelly Pilarski. I live in West Hollywood on the east side. I'm here today in support of the traffic calming and speed limit reductions. So the West Hollywood Vision Zero plan is an absolutely necessary initiative that prioritizes safety, equity, and sustainability for everyone who lives and works and visits the city. At its core, Vision Zero is about saving lives by reimagining our streets and transportation systems and eliminating traffic-related fatalities and severe injuries. Thank you, David, for bringing this to the commission. I'm here to show my full support. Speed kills. I walk around the city every day. Todd, I see you every day. I'm biking, I'm walking. I know the speed limits on all of these streets because I walk them and I watch people go 65, 50 miles an hour on them. Every other city that I've lived in has these measures to protect their citizens. In 2028, this could not be more important for this city. While improving traffic safety and reducing pedestrian and cyclist deaths will require more than speed limit reductions, speed is a significant contributor to the deaths for everyone. The data about and the benefits of speed reductions is overwhelming and all positive. All of these stats can be found anywhere. David has included a handful of them in the staff report if you read it. We've all seen the scary and reckless driving speeds that people travel at. I was almost about to sit down in the Jones restaurant when someone ran the light and ran into that restaurant. So we don't want to lose any more restaurants to cars going more than 35 miles an hour, and we don't want to lose any more people. I know there's a problem here where people forget that we're all people, and when we get in our cars, we become something else. We're not. We're the same people. So I know there's a lot of anti-bike in the city right now. I just want to remind everyone that it's all of us, and we all choose to get around how we choose to get around. And we're the Public Safety Commission. So you need to be worried about the safety for everyone, not just people in their cars. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Next, we have Jordan Beard. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I'm strongly in favor of reducing speed limits on our streets. As the report showed, the data is clear. Even a relatively small 10-mile-per-hour decrease can have major life-saving impacts for both drivers and pedestrians. As mentioned in the staff report, these changes will likely have little to no impact on travel times during peak hours, so any concerns about this creating some sort of horrendous rush hour situation seem relatively mute given the data that we have. Of all the ways that our city can save lives and make our community safer, I cannot think of a more cost-effective approach. From a public safety perspective, about $30,000 to save lives is a no-brainer. This is an important step towards reclaiming our streets from cut-through traffic and instead prioritizing our streets for people that live and work here, thinking of our streets and sidewalks as a valuable community asset, which they are. That said, we cannot simply swap out signs and expect our streets to become safer. I am concerned that many drivers already disregard posted speed limits. I'd be curious to see studies of how regularly cars on streets like Fountain or Sunset exceed current posted limits. While this is an important measure, I do think we need to approach street safety holistically, as we have so many different tools in our toolbox. To truly make our streets safer, we need to combine lower speed limits with improved street design that prioritizes safety over convenience. There are many design techniques such as road narrowing, lane reduction, speed bumps, raised crosswalks, bollards, protected bike lanes, chicanes, etc., that can make our streets safer by physically discouraging improper and unlawful vehicle operation, as well as promoting safer, slower speeds. Those have all been thoroughly studied and the data is clear, and I hope that we can implement more of these types of safety interventions on streets in West Hollywood. As has already been discussed, I would love to see us somehow becoming part of this elusive automated speed camera program that seems like there have been basically none of them implemented in the region, but I would love to see us join that and try to push that forward. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. And that is all the public comments.
Great, thank you. David, thank you for your presentation. Commissioner Hallman, one last
Thank you.
question.
Mr. What is the classification for Fountain? I was looking for it in the report. I might be missing it, but how is Fountain classified?
When you say classified, you mean in terms of which of the designations we're looking at for Fountain?
Yeah, like we know Santa Monica might be more of like, let's say, a business corridor. So how do we classify Fountain?
There's two different things here. I mean, roadway classifications typically, if you're talking about like arterials and collectors and minor streets and that sort of thing, like traffic engineer jargon, I believe Fountain is a collector currently.
Minor arterial.
Minor arterial. They're, but in terms of what we're looking at to lower the speed limit on Fountain, we're looking at, I believe it's the safety corridor designation.
Okay, but are we also looking at the fact that it's residential? Fountain is a residential street.
Yes, I mean, certainly we're aware of that, but I think it's important not to get hung up on the names of the different categories in terms of how we access the reductions enabled by the new state law. To say that we're using the safety corridor criteria under the law, that's not the city saying that Fountain isn't one of these other corridors. It is also a pedestrian bike corridor. It is also, there's a segment of it that has businesses. It's very small. But the names of those different criteria under the law that we have to designate in order to access these reductions, that's not the city trying to redefine the corridor. That's just which provision of the law we're applying to achieve the reductions here.
Okay, I understand that. I just, from someone who walks Fountain 5 days a week, and what I see on Fountain are primarily residents and vehicles going at a high rate of speed. I just think that needs to be taken in consideration, especially after I saw one of my neighbors lying in the middle of the intersection of Santa Monica and Formosa with a sheet over him because he was trying to cross and he was hit and killed. So I just want to make sure that that's taken into consideration.
We certainly looked at the character of each of the streets where we're proposing the different reductions, and that's part of why there was a question by one of your colleagues about why didn't we designate Santa Monica a business corridor, and that was a determination that in that case, that being a larger street, a commercial street, that lower reduction was maybe not appropriate on Santa Monica. But if what you're asking is, should we look at a more intense reduction to Fountain, is that your suggestion?
I don't know if it's a more intense reduction. I just think we need to classify it accordingly for what it is, and not pretend that it's something that it's not. It's a residential corridor.
Understood. Thank you. We're definitely not trying to indicate that Fountain is not a residential corridor.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments from commissioners? Great. Thank you, David. All right, the next item on our agenda for this evening is the Public Safety Commission will receive an overview of the city's Neighborhood and Business Safety Division code enforcement. Welcome.
There we go. Good evening, Chair Aramian and commissioners of the city's Public Safety Commission. My name is Vito Adamitis. I'm the Neighborhood and Business Safety Manager for the city. I am joined tonight by Code Enforcement Supervisors Jessica Benitez and Albert Torres. And we're pleased to be here tonight to present a brief PowerPoint and an overview of the city's code enforcement operations. So in our operations, we conduct code enforcement. We enforce municipal and state laws, excluding the penal code. Our officers are non-sworn officers, so they're not peace officers, but they do have training in the area of arrest and control, and they're also California Code Enforcement Officer certified officers. So that involves training and ongoing, in fact, training and education units to keep that certification current. We uniquely provide 7-day-a-week services to the community. So we have officers in the community 7 days a week. In the Neighborhood and Business Safety Division, we include a number of operations in addition to code enforcement activities. So we have business licensing and permitting. We are the staff liaison to the city's Business License Commission. We oversee and issue regulatory licenses, extended hour construction permits, and special event permits. We also oversee the contract with the Los Angeles County Animal Care and Control, which is a contract service. This is an organization chart of our Neighborhood and Business Safety Division. We have a total of 15 staff, 12 officers, and a code enforcement technician, a code enforcement specialist, and an administrative specialist, 4. So we have a total of 12 officers. I'm also a certified officer and am proud to be part of this team. We have a number of different ways that members of the community can get a hold of us. So our hours, Monday through Wednesday, are 7 a.m. to midnight, Thursday, 7 a.m. to 3 a.m., and Friday and Saturday, 7 a.m. to 4 a.m., and Sunday, 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. So you can see that the hours of coverage for the community to respond to calls for service is intended to provide a high level of service to our residents and business in the community. We have office hours Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. for handling business license renewals, special event, and permitting, and also Friday 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So we have voicemail. Our 24/7 contact number for residents to reach is the 323-848-6516 number. We have our division phone and email here noted, and also residents can submit service requests on the City of West Hollywood's official app. Animal Care and Control are 24/7 services provided on contract with Los Angeles County, and the contact information is noted here. So what are the type of enforcement items that code enforcement deals with? So here are a listing of a few. They include vacant properties, property maintenance issues, noise ordinance, short-term vacation rentals, construction management ordinance, illegal construction. We also deal with zoning requirements, business licensing, and tax requirements. We also enforce permit conditions, and we also assist and coordinate with regulatory agencies here in the City of West Hollywood. Just to give you a little bit of idea of the number of service requests that we received in the division on an annual basis, the numbers that we have for January through November here. So we still have the month of December to capture. But in essence, what you're seeing is roughly about 7,000 calls for service a year if you average the 4 years that you see before you. We did see a big jump in last year's numbers, but suffice to say that we do receive a large number of requests, and it's important to also share that the officers respond to these requests 7 days a week. So we have 34 different business license types in the city that we oversee, and here's a listing of some of them. Includes dance, entertainment, extended hour businesses, massage parlors and technicians, pawnbrokers, and secondhand dealers. The most common business licenses that we issue include public eating places and food establishments, sidewalk vending, tobacco retailers, and valet parking. And I might note that there are certain types of business licenses that require Business License Commission approval, and they are listed here. Cannabis business licenses, which include adult use retail, medical dispensaries, delivery, and consumption. This includes smoking and edibles, extended hour business licenses, and gun dealers. Here's some additional data for you just over the last 4 years from 2021. So you can see that for new business licenses, it averages fairly close to, I think, about just over 60 or so a year, 66 a year to be exact. For business license renewals, a little over 600 per year. And temporary business licenses are tracking roughly about, on average, about 35 per year. There was a low there in 2021, I think, coming out of COVID. So shortly after that, you can see the subsequent years it went up. So extended hour construction permits, these are required for construction work taking place outside of the approved construction hours. So approved construction hours at 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And on Saturdays, work is limited to interior work only. These permits are regularly monitored, and we do have officers to ensure that calls for service regarding violations of those permits are responded to in a timely manner. We also issue special event permits. They're restricted to permitted brick and mortar establishments within the city of West Hollywood. And I might add that although the slide here shows that businesses are allowed to have 12 activations and 12 special event permits per year, this number has been changed as a result of the council's action based on their directive to staff issued earlier in June of this year, where we worked with the Business License Commission, the Planning Commission, the Chamber of Commerce to increase the number of activations and special event permits that are allowed during a calendar year. So that number has been changed to 16. These permits also involve additional approvals from other governing agencies, for example, city departments of engineering and building and safety, the film office, as well as outside agencies like LA County Fire Prevention, the Sheriff's Department, and the Health Department. Here you can see another graph of extended hour construction permits and special event permits. Roughly, the extended hour construction permits average about 200 a year, and the special event permits average close to 300 per year. So you can see there's quite a bit of permitting activity that takes place within the Neighborhood and Business Safety Division. And this concludes our presentation tonight. I just want to express my thanks to all of our staff in the Neighborhood and Business Safety Department for the tremendous work that they do day in and day out, including on the weekends and at night. And also want to extend my thanks to our code enforcement supervisors, Jessica and Albert, for their hard work in overseeing the teams and delivering the high level of service that our community expects. With that, that concludes my presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Vito. Any comments from commissioners?
I have a comment, Chair.
Commissioner Blau?
Thank you. I just want to as well thank you, Vito, and the team in code enforcement for all the work that you do and the service that you provide to the city. I know that personally, or what I'll say is that as residents, we're very lucky in the city of West Hollywood to have such a great code enforcement division. I think it's one of our biggest assets, and it's actually one of the main reasons that I love the city. You know, my experience with code enforcement has only ever been positive, prompt, and high service to basically my own residential concerns, whether it be, you know, after hours business noise, after hours construction, or even, you know, property maintenance issues that were blocking, like huge bushes that were blocking the sidewalk, for instance. So to members of the community, anyone here or watching, I would definitely say if you've got an issue that falls within the jurisdiction of what code enforcement can work with, they provide such a high service, and they're so valuable and so friendly and prompt. So thank you, and thank you to the team very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your kind words to the team. Thank you for that. It's a team effort.
Commissioner Post?
Hi, yeah, thank you for the presentation. Our you all also the group that actually takes in new applications as well, or is it just enforcement of these licenses?
We do take in new applications as well.
Okay, beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, I know I was talking to a recent business owner that was looking at a property that is retail zoned, but I think he would have to get, he's hoping to serve food, and would have to get, I believe it looked like a food serving permit, and was hopeful if I could possibly refer him to you all to help work through that process.
Yes, most definitely. And also, I want to make a clarification that all businesses required to have a business tax certificate through the finance department. There are 34 uses, such as your friends that sells food, that will be required to have a public eating business license through our division. So definitely contact, refer them over to us, and we'll guide them through the right department.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Hallman.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Idamitis, you know I'm a fan. You know I love our code enforcement team. I think you do an amazing job. I have you on speed dial, but you know that already. For a city that's 1.9 miles, we have a lot that's going on, especially a lot of construction. Not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you think we have enough officers to handle everything that's going on, especially with new construction constantly starting in residential areas? Like, would you benefit by having the team augmented in some capacity?
First off, thank you, Commissioner Hallman, for your support of the team. I know it's greatly appreciated. We have the resources that we're provided with by the council and through our city administration, our director, our city manager, and we do the job that we're called upon to do every single day. And so I feel that the resources that we have are adequate to deliver the level of service that we provide right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Nickel.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vito and team, for the presentation. Construction. You certainly know that I've called you many times when there was a building being built beside me. My neighbors would ask me to reach out for various issues, normally noise, outside of permitted hours. One of the other big issues, and I've had other people who live in neighborhoods where there's construction going on, parking. So I understand that if there's construction, are the construction vehicles allowed, the workers, to park on the streets, and to, especially if it's a permitted street, or are they supposed to be provided a place to park?
As part of the construction management plan and permit that we review with construction projects, they're required to obtain an encroachment permit for construction vehicles that are using the city street. We ensure that they obtain those permits. If they, for some reason, block off the street when they're not supposed to, and we've received reports about that, or they have activities taking place that are in violation of that construction management plan, if you will, then we respond and take corrective measures to address that. There are also requirements within the construction management plan that if there is a neighborhood where there is tight parking already, they're supposed to make arrangements to provide parking for their workers in an area that does not impact that neighborhood. So when you begin putting in large forklifts and semi-trucks that come in to deliver materials in a residential area, in most cases, these are some of the calls for service that we receive and that we respond to.
But what about the personal vehicles of the construction workers themselves? They have to be able to park close to where they work, but parking is at a premium, and this was an issue in my neighborhood that my neighbors would often come to me about.
So it is the responsibility of the project that obtains permits from the city to, as part of the construction management plan, secure parking to find locations for the construction workers to park so they do not impact the residents where this construction activity is taking place.
And in the instance I'm thinking of, as part of the neighborhood watch group, we had them come out, and this was promised to us too as a neighborhood, but they just ended up parking wherever they want. So that is something that when people come to me and they have construction in their neighborhoods, that they can reach out to you and
Absolutely.
see about that.
And I also want to emphasize, we have received reports and responded to incidents where people are quote unquote reserving parking on the street by putting out improper signage or barriers so that the neighbors are not able to use those parking spaces even at night. Those are calls that should be directed to us right away for assistance, because that's not allowed.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. I also want to just say, Vito, Jessica, thank you for you and your team. I know you guys do a lot of work. I've seen you guys out there. I've worked with you guys for several years, from Halloween to Gay Pride. It's a very challenging job, and I just want to say thank you for everything that you guys do. It's not easy sometimes. You know, you may upset some businesses, you may upset some people, but at the end of the day, what you guys do is for the better for the city, and I really just want to say on record that I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Hallman.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Nickel opened a Pandora's box, and I'm like happy to go down this rabbit hole. Because my end of town has been under construction for about a decade, and we are in a PTSD stage with construction. Some of the things that Commissioner Nickel was discussing, like construction worker parking, those types of things, stanchioning off or roping off areas so residents can't park. How is that information disseminated to each construction team or company? Like, that's not through code enforcement, is it?
We thank you, Commissioner Hallman, and thank you, Commissioner Nickel, for your previous question on this. So code enforcement staff, when they do respond to a call for service on this, part of their job in making contact with the construction team is also to educate them on what has been permitted, so that if there's a future call for service, that they now know that they were put on notice and they understand what the city's codes and regulations are. That's part of our contact with the responsible parties.
So they're not given said information prior to starting construction?
So to answer your question, good afternoon, good evening. Every construction site in the city of West Hollywood, while they go through the construction phase and the plans, they're given a construction management plan which outlines all the rules and regulations, from construction hours, from encroachment permits, from parking in the neighborhood. And then they need to sign those agreements. And as part of that, we'll issue a building permit. If they don't sign the construction management plan, then a building permit may be put on hold. And also to Mr. Adamaida's point is that each construction site is required to place a sign at each construction location with a phone number. And in there, it states that no vehicles should be parked in the neighborhood. It's a challenge sometimes at certain situations, but if you provide us with the address, we'll be more than happy to contact the property owner, not the construction or the general contractor. When we find a violation, we'll send a citation to the property owner, to the main source, so that they know what their subcontractors or their contractors are doing.
Okay, I get it. So they typically sign, but then they decide to do what they want to do, is basically what happens. And I notice a big issue, Team A may come in and they'll put them through the paces and they learn what to do, but then another team will come in to do another stage and it starts all over again, like every time. And I'm not saying that it's something that's at the fault of code. I just want to know where this breakdown is, because yes, we need housing. Construction needs to happen, but it shouldn't happen at the cost of the residents. The residents are the ones that suffer. So I'm just trying to figure out how we can fix this problem so it works better for residents as well as for your team. So they're not running around, chasing these individuals that continue to make the same infractions again and again and again.
It's a good point, Commissioner Hallman. One of the efforts that we do undertake is the education component, and sometimes there's a change of ownership in some of these projects, where, as you said, the team that was previously there, and the construction team and the superintendent get swapped out for a new team and we, as part of our work effort, try to ensure when we get complaints that new team is aware of the rules and regulations. So that limits their impact to that neighborhood, and it also reduces the calls for service where they're being reported to be in violation. We try to work with people to ensure that they comply with the rules in a voluntary manner at first. And then if they continue to go down the path of non-compliance, then we have other tools that we can apply. But there's an education component to code enforcement, and this area is one of those areas.
Okay, again, I think your team does an amazing job. You have a large task at hand for a city that's only 1.9 miles. So I'm just trying to see how we can help you, with this process.
Thank you so much for the support. It's greatly appreciated.
Any other commissioner comments? Commission Secretary, do we have any public speakers at this time?
We don't have any public comments on this item.
Thank you. Vito, Jessica, and team, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Happy holidays to you guys.
You as well.
Moving right along, our next item on our agenda will be from the Los Angeles County Fire Department, who will provide a report on activity for November. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Sarah Rathbun. I'm the A-Shift Battalion Chief for the Los Angeles County Fire Department assigned to Fire Station 7, right up the street here. And this is my 7 Alpha Shift Captain, David Ball, who we have the pleasure of joining us this evening. I brought him down here so that if you did want to see a live firefighter that's actually on an engine in the flesh instead of one of the people that points their fingers and talks on the radio, that he would be here to answer your questions. We're fortunate to have him. He's the most senior West Hollywood firefighter that we have, because he was actually here as an engineer as well. So he has a lot of time in the seat in West Hollywood. He's also a drone operator, as well as on our EMS Quality Improvement Committee. So he really gets around the county doing events at SoFi and things with Homeland, and has a wide scope of understanding as far as our capabilities and as far as the threat to public safety in the area. So to get right into it, our fire activity report for the city of West Hollywood for November of 2024 is in front of you. I have to say it's a privilege to sit here and look at statistics and listen to these other folks speak here and try and put us all out of a job, because it's a very unique group of people that sit there trying to make sure they have nothing else to do. And I feel like that's always the goal here at the Public Safety Commission. So we ran total responses 616 for the month of November. We saw 411 patients and transported 301 of those. They were mostly BLS transports, meaning that there was no paramedic necessary for the transport by our protocol. And if you move on to the second page, as well as the third page, you can see the types of fire incidents specifically, and then lastly, the hazardous conditions that we encountered. What I want to highlight here for you as far as the takeaway from these statistics, and specifically from the reports from November, is that you see a lot of the call type of rubbish fire. And I was actually speaking, I called over to LA City just to see what their statistics look like before I came down here, so that I could get an idea of whether this was a common trend or whether it was unique to our city. Over the past few years, their incidence of rubbish fire, which is the most common fire that could be called a warming fire. It's usually a result of unhoused persons, whether it's cooking, warming, etc. Unfortunately, we don't have separate call types for those. They all seem to fall under rubbish, so it's the best way to get an idea of what our unhoused community has done to contribute to our call volume that month and whether or not particular programs are working. His increase was 200 to 300% over the last 3 years for LA City as far as these types of fires. And so I think what we're looking at here is a pretty small uptick in comparison to Los Angeles City, which, as we know, is right next door to us and is struggling with some of the same things that we're struggling with as far as providing for our community members that are outdoors. But you can see that this call on San Vicente here was due to an encampment in the planter area adjacent to the lot. If you go down to the 23rd on Santa Monica and San Vicente, we have another warming fire in an alley. And if you look just back to, I believe it was last Friday, we had a fire in the IHOP that I was actually just talking to code enforcement about, which was very similarly caused. So this is just something I would hope to take away a solution of more collaboration. We have wonderful programs here in the city of West Hollywood that we can both speak to the fact that we don't have elsewhere. And we want to make sure that the public is also passing that information along and that it's getting out in more ways than just us and the sheriff. I can tell you the sheriffs have been a wonderful partner to us as far as these referrals and making sure these folks get to places where they can access help if necessary. But it still remains a pretty big problem, and a combination of the vacancies that we've experienced in our business districts as well as the unhoused community continues to present challenges for us. So before I move on to the last thing I have for you regarding the weather, are there any questions on that or the statistics?
Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Nickel?
I actually have a question. It's so good to see you, Battalion Chief. So you mentioned a fire inside the IHOP. So the building is not secured then?
That's correct. The fire itself did not start inside. It was just on the exterior, but the building was occupied when we went inside. And there was evidence that there had been not only folks living inside, but also creating cooking and warming fires over various periods of time.
So this is another disaster waiting to happen.
Your words, not mine, sir.
I mean, I certainly hope not, but we've had experience, especially on the east side, with vacant buildings, in this case, residential buildings, where these things happen. So I certainly hope that the city reaches out to the owners of this building and makes them secure it. Maybe we need to get some block by block there to secure it, or, yeah, because the last thing you need is, I know you're sick of being called out to Fountain and Fairfax on the northwest corner. I've brought this up many times when I've been on ride-alongs. You've been called there repeatedly. We don't want this to start happening at the IHOP.
Totally agree, and I think our code enforcement folks have done a great job in putting pressure on the owners of that building to batten down the hatches, if you will, and that's in process. And also, speaking with Vito, they are also doing 24-hour security, or they're asking them to do 24-hour security. But before that gets in place, I think you've really made a great suggestion of just increasing the presence of block by block down there so that we don't, again, we want to put ourselves out of a job. We don't want to make more. So prevention is the cure here.
Well, good. I'll mention that coming up. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Post?
Yeah, on a specific incident, it wasn't actually technically in West Hollywood, but I actually had a few questions from residents just because of the fumes and things. Was the AutoZone burn at Highland and Fountain, and just wanted to see if you could provide any context around that situation specifically.
Are you asking for like a post status
Yeah, a little bit. Just around, I know folks were asking about hazardous materials, but you could smell it in the air a little bit that day when it was
Yeah.
happening. So that's all I was asking
Because
about.
it's in LA City's area, I don't have a cause or extended result for you, but I can tell you when that went out, we did just reach out to them and ask them if they needed any assistance from our hazmat folks. They already had their folks in place and they were doing air monitoring as well as controlling the runoff. And those are standard procedures anytime we have even a single family detached garage, we consider this at this point. So definitely with something like an auto zone, and they had those procedures in place. That's actually one of the reasons that we're kind of expanding our drone programs and our hazardous material programs, because like it or not, we have a world that is expanding in lots of very creative ways. And that means that figuring out what we're dealing with without being right up next to it inside of that zone is really important. And so we're excited to see the tools that West Hollywood is rolling out through the sheriffs that could be useful for things like that. And we're also always going to be in contact with outside agencies when their incidents potentially impact our city.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hallman?
Thank you, Chair. It's great to see you. Good evening. Does fire have its own drone program? I know you mentioned something earlier, and my ears perked up.
And that's why I brought Captain Ball.
That's correct, yeah. I'm also involved in our department's Homeland Security section, which runs the drone program for our entire department. We do currently have drones and drone responses. Right now, we're just responding to all second alarm structure fires to provide our battalion chiefs different aerial views and different perspective of the incidents. We've been finding them very useful in hazmat situations, and it really helps speed the process up. Instead of sending an entry team in fully suited up, which can take a while, we could put a drone up, go in, look and see what the issue is, and possibly mitigate it quicker. And we're also working on technology that has drones that have the air monitoring capabilities as well for those hazmat situations. Other parts of the county, we're using them on over the sides and search and rescues to go down and get a visual before we actually send our personnel down. So the technology is constantly evolving very quickly, and we're always coming up with different ways to use it. We have used our drones during some of the events here in West Hollywood, Pride event and Halloween event. We did have our Homeland Security section here. We did have the drones available for use as a tool for us in case we did need to visualize something that we couldn't get to quickly. We're also able to monitor crowd density in certain areas and post up personnel closer to that if we feel like there was a need for that. So we do have a drone program, and we'd be definitely more than happy to assist the city with anything that's needed.
No, I think that's fantastic and great news. Humor me, maybe, I don't get it, but IHOP is a corporation. Are there no guidelines that when you're like, okay, we're rolling up the carpet, we're locking the door, how this abandoned structure should be secured? I mean, I know it may be a little different for residents, but we're talking about a business.
Yeah, that actually is a question that I was asking Vito before, and he was very clear on the requirements for them to continue to leave that building in the state that it was. So I actually think it's code enforcement that is what is currently requiring IHOP to close its doors, lock it up, make sure it's not a public nuisance, ensure that there's security around it because it has been vacant so long. And so they would have to speak to the specific regulations because unlike an occupied building, which we're obviously all over, that's where they really get involved. And I believe that's why they've been so heavy-handed here because of the resulting possibility of disaster.
Okay. Yeah, because, I mean, history just continues to repeat itself. with these large abandoned structures. Okay.
Yeah, we're just as concerned as you are. We do regular sweeps of Santa Monica in particular, but Melrose has quite a few. I know Captain Ball just finished his inventory of the vacant structures. They stay on top of them, the access, their state, whether or not their utilities are on, and make sure that we have full situational awareness should something happen. But it has been changing a lot. It's been difficult to kind of keep track. It's not as bad as right after COVID, but it's still very challenging. This is an area with, unfortunately, some high turnover.
So with those safety checks, is that something that drones could do? Like, say, if these addresses are addresses of concern, can you send a drone out to just survey that space? Someone can go, wait, we have some problem issues here. We need to go physically and look at this.
Yeah, that'll be a great question for when the sheriffs get their drone up. I'm interested to see how it's used overall. And I'm also interested to talk a little more to code enforcement to find out where we can be useful in that area, because our drones are very incident-based. We only have 15 operators at this point, and they're all over the county of Los Angeles, which is 3 times the state of Delaware. We're incredibly fortunate that Dave happens to be assigned here. And so when we need one, he's often right in our back pocket, but that's not the case across the board. So we've never really used it in that way. We've always preferred to put boots on the ground so that we can see things like how the doors are secured, look in the windows, whether or not there's fire protection systems in place with working sprinklers, and all of that needs kind of a closer eye. But I see where you're going with it, and I do think that down the road we are going to see expansions of their use in that regard. I don't know if you have anything to add?
No.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, because it's just such great technology. I mean, just as something to assist you, because obviously there are a lot of abandoned properties. So, and if we have you here and we've got the drone here, okay, that's very exciting though. That's great news. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Commission Secretary, do we have any public speakers at this time?
We have no public speakers at this time.
Mr. Chair, I do have one thing about the weather, if you're okay
Yes.
with me adding that. I'm going to shamelessly take this opportunity to remind everyone that it is a very large and very unique red flag over the next 3 days. And so we really want our citizens to be aware that this is a particularly dangerous situation with the low humidity, the high winds, and the high probability for ignition for fire. So what we're looking at is, and this includes the Hollywood Hills, we're looking at probability of spotting from a fire up to 3 miles with wind gusts up to 80 miles an hour. And that means that even though we're not thinking that we're in the wildland urban interface and we're in the center of the city here, we're forgetting that those Hollywood Hills right above us, or Franklin Canyon right over the top of Beverly Hills, we have a north wind. That means it's blowing toward the south, and that puts us squarely in that center there. So just having our folks be aware that even though they may not be living in the forest, anytime a day like this happens, we're really on our guard. And we've augmented our staffing. We have 3 strike teams to the tune of 15 extra engines, plus fixed wing aircraft that we've extended and kept from Canada, and all the helicopters and drones and hand crews and dozers and resources. We've thrown everything at it because we have everywhere from Lancaster to Santa Clarita all the way down. So we definitely have the resources and we have them in place, but we want to make sure our citizens are prepared, that they've cleared the leaf litter off of their roofs and away from their houses, because we don't want sparks flying down out of LA City's area, to your point about AutoZone, that then cause a structure fire from that brush fire up there. So just have everybody really monitor the news, know that there may be power outages, and try and take care of themselves. And we're here for you if there are wires down or if there's anything concerning. That's this kind of thing where you look up and you see a little bit of smoke in the mountains. We don't mess around with it on a day like that. If they could just call in, we'd really appreciate it.
So when does the red flag warning start? Are we in it right now?
This evening is actually, the winds are supposed to start at 10 p.m. And once they start at 10, they're not going to finish until approximately 8 p.m. on Wednesday. And they'll adjust it day by day. But tomorrow's going to be our worst day for sure, probably in the afternoon.
Commissioner Hallman.
Thank you, Chair. Piggybacking on that, is our communication department, do we know, sending out any information on this to residents? I know I follow our city's Twitter, or X rather, but are we doing any additional measures?
Thank you for the question. We are fortunately constantly in touch with our partners at the LA County Fire Department, and they do share updates when it comes to the red flag warnings, and they have been in communication with us, and we have been sharing that information with our communications team. So they are monitoring that closely and being selective on what is appropriate to share with the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Battalion Chief.
Thank you
Captain,
so
thank
much.
you very much. Happy holidays to you guys.
We appreciate the time.
All right, moving along. Our next item on our agenda is from Block by Block Security Ambassadors, who will provide us with a report on activity for November. Welcome, Erica.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the month of November, our Block by Block ambassadors provided 4,251 business contacts throughout the city. Unhoused contacts totaled 1,405, and we attended to 688 calls for service with an average response time of 14.2 minutes. I'd like to highlight some additional patrols that we have been conducting to further our presence. Over the last few weeks, we've provided additional patrols to Hart Park, where we have encountered numerous encampments and issues with individuals that have been found creating encampments. And so the result of these patrols have allowed us to keep those areas clear. As you all know, the La Jolla kiosk is still active. That is right behind Orbar and Out of the Closet. We are actively working to get that or activate that kiosk to a 24-hour kiosk, but currently it is still operating from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. The Fairfax kiosk was moved to the southwest corner of Fairfax and Santa Monica, right to the left of Mamie's, after a meeting with the businesses along that corridor between Fairfax and I forget the Havenhurst, I think it was, where they expressed some concerns around, the activity around the bus stops. And so we were able to make that change within the same day after having that kiosk, working with the businesses there to store the kiosk, and so that we can easily access it and keep an eye on that area. Additionally, I wanted to highlight some other key items for November that our ambassadors took part in. First, on 11/18, we hosted our final LGBTQ+ training. This is a sensitivity training that we've been doing over the course of the year that is specific to our account. We had about 30 ambassadors in attendance for that training. On 11/20, we also partnered with Be Alive around Narcan and harm reduction training. As you're all aware, they are currently on Santa Monica. They've moved locations, and so their information is, incredibly vital to our ambassadors as they are out in the field making contact with individuals that could potentially be experiencing overdose symptoms or a substance abuse issues. And so this training I find particularly important so that they can help identify and get the right resources for individuals as necessary. I forgot to mention this during the last meeting, but I did want to give a shout out to one of our ambassadors who was able to work with the Sheriff's Department detectives in helping to identify the individual that was responsible for the Barney's Beanery attack. They were the one that placed the call as they saw the individual across the street, engaging in this aggressive behavior. And so he was vital to their investigation. So I'm incredibly grateful for him and his cooperation in the investigation. In addition, our ambassador at Veterans Park smelled fire at the IHOP, or smelled smoke, and was the one that placed the call to LAFD. Over the weekend, we also made sure that our overnight teams patrolled the area a little bit more, just as code, got in contact with the property owner. And in speaking to their teams, it sounds like they have met with the property owner and are looking to get them to provide 24/7 security for the interior of their building. In addition, closing off the area that is accessible to transients or unhoused that have made their way inside. And it sounds like they're also working on getting more lighting and even for the area. And then also clearing, any overgrown vegetation that would allow for, individuals to kind of enter the property when, when patrols aren't around. And then lastly, on 11/21 was the official launch of our Senior Safety Officer Program at both the West Hollywood Arc and Park, as well as Plummer Park. That is a program that we have partnered with the city and park staff to bring to life. And so this program is specific to those two parks. It's been live now for a few weeks now. And we've received a lot of positive feedback from park staff as their presence has definitely been felt. And so we look forward to continuing to work with our senior safety officers and park staff and members of the community to continue to improve on the program and to work out any kinks, over the last few weeks, and overall improve, community safety at these two facilities, not only for community members, but park staff as well. And that concludes my report for the month of November. If any of you have any questions.
Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Post?
Yeah, just appreciate the senior safety officer program. I've definitely been seeing them on my daily walks through Plummer Park, and as you said, their presence is definitely felt. And also just wanted to say appreciate the circulation or changing of the kiosk at the Fairfax intersection. As I've also frequent there in the business, I actually mentioned previously that I was interested in doing food license is just south of Mommy. That's looking at a location. And I think I saw the kiosk on the Santa Monica side the other day, and just maybe having them on the Fairfax side once or twice could also be interesting just to see if that is supportive. But I appreciate the changing of the corner regardless, and I think that's greatly appreciated by those businesses as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Blau?
Thank you, and thank you for your report. Just one thing based off of, I'm sure you heard what Chief Cates was just talking about with the red flag for the next couple days. I'm wondering, and I know that you work with the Community Safety Department to figure out your deployments, but I'm wondering if, especially over the next couple days, if there's an ability to, continue to maybe focus on patrolling these areas that are maybe more residential but have vegetation. I'm thinking Hart Park as an example. There's a lot of dry vegetation there, and I don't know how frequently the sheriff is able to drive past there, for instance. And obviously there's the notes on here. I'm thinking maybe that might be a good place, but there's also lots of other parks in the city that maybe if we had the ability to for the next couple days, hopefully Block by Block doesn't catch any kind of fires, rather there's no fires for them to catch. But as you pointed out, there's two recently that they were able to catch. So I think that might be something great to leverage if the ability is there.
Yeah, we will work with the Community Safety Department to, adjust deployments as necessary. So definitely.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Hallman?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's great that you highlighted some of the ways that our security ambassadors have helped in very serious situations, like in the situation with helping the sheriffs find that individual, because there's still a lot of gray area. A lot of residents just don't understand exactly what this program is or how it was designed. While you were speaking, it just popped into my head. I went on the city website, and there is complete information on the city's website about the program and what the ambassadors do. Is there any way to maybe add these highlights to our monthly reports if there are things that we need to be aware of things that ambassadors do that maybe are outside of the call of duty or that we need to recognize and be aware of?
Yeah, I can work with Anita and Danny to see if there's any modifications that we can make to our reporting and how we can continue to highlight. But at the minimum, I think this forum is a perfect place to do it. So I think a lot of the times our ambassadors are, they themselves will forget to kind of highlight some of their work, and I will find out secondhand from a team lead or a supervisor that they did something great, or I'll see it in an incident report, and I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me about this? So, any chance that I get to highlight some of their work, we will absolutely take it and work with community safety to see how we can
Which is
incorporate
also a
that
great
order.
sign because that means they are very cognizant of what their job is.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, look at me, look what I did. They're like, this is my job. This
Yeah.
is what I do. So,
And it's the observe and report aspect,
Yeah.
that in these cases, is highlighting, the responsibility that they have, so.
yeah, and thank you. I know the kiosk thing is difficult. I know it is, but thank you for, what you and your team does.
Thank you.
I also want to piggyback on what Commissioner Hallman said. Erica, your two block-by-block ambassadors should be commended, especially for notifying LASD when they noticed the person who committed that crime at Barney's Beanery, as well as the ambassador who called the fire department for the IHOP flower. So I don't know if that is something the Public Safety Commission as a whole can recommend for City Council to acknowledge maybe, those two block-by-block ambassadors, especially the one who notified the Sheriff's Department when they spotted the assailant who did that horrible assault on the valet driver at Barney's Beanery, as well as the ambassador who did call the fire department when they smelled smoke when the IHOP was on fire. Is that something that's possible?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for these suggestions, and it's a wonderful opportunity to highlight the amazing work that our block-by-block ambassadors do. What we can do is we will be presenting our semi-annual community safety update to the City Council next month. We will make sure to include this in the presentation and highlight this. And also, if you recall, we're going to continue our tradition of doing the Public Safety Awards, our annual awards that we have, and that's going to be coming up in March. So that will be another opportunity where we can highlight these achievements as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Nickel.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Erica. So it sounds like code is on it, but again, IHOP, if there is any kind of gap before the owner does what they need to do, it might be a good idea to have your people there.
Yeah, well, we're already at Veterans Park, right across, and so our overnight teams, actually, our entirety of our team has been notified just to provide more proactive patrols in that area. We don't want to stray too far from the kiosk, but we do make contact. I pass by sometimes and there's somebody at the CVS, so I will contact the ambassador like, hey, can you, make contact with the person at the CVS who's on the sidewalk, and so they are able to move. So we will continue to advise them to, just keep an eye out. And if they see any movement, anything at all, any gaps, they know, just the chain of command and how to report that so that we can get that information to code or sheriffs if necessary.
Great, thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? All right. Thank you, Erica. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
All right, the next item on our agenda, the Public Safety Commission will discuss canceling or rescheduling its meeting for February 24th, 2025.
Thank you, Chair. At the October 21st City Council meeting, the City Council approved a joint study session and scheduled it on February 24th at 6 p.m. This is the same day as the Public Safety Commission meeting, so the Public Safety Commission will need to either cancel or reschedule this meeting. We would like to request a direction from the Commission to either cancel or reschedule the February Public Safety Commission meeting.
I would like to hear what my colleagues would have to say, but I would like to reschedule rather than cancel.
I concur. And what is this joint study session that council approved? Is that with public safety or with another commission?
It is with another commission. It is with the Planning Commission.
Then we need to reschedule our meeting. I'm always against us canceling our meetings. I just think it's a bad idea and sets a very bad precedent.
Okay, based on that direction, staff would like to propose the second Monday of the month, which would be February 10th, for the rescheduled date.
Sounds good.
Agreed.
Commissioners? February 10th, 2025 it is.
Can we make it a special meeting? Because it's not on the regular schedule, would it be counted as a special meeting as opposed to a regularly scheduled meeting?
Because we're doing it in advance and there's no topic that we're discussing that is out of the norm of the Public Safety Commission or anything that is unique or just called upon for a special meeting, and we're doing it in advance of time, it'll still be considered a regular meeting.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
All right. That was easy breezy. Moving on along. Item 9 on our agenda is items from staff. Are there any community safety updates?
Thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. This last Saturday on December 7th, we held an active shooter training that was open to the community on best practices, situational awareness, responding to injuries, and more in the event of such a situation. It was a great morning spent with the community, sharing valuable information and training. On December 3rd, we held a virtual public safety technology town hall. My apologies. Sorry about that. We held a public safety virtual town hall meeting we'll also be hosting a in-person town hall meeting coming up on December 17th here in the West Hollywood Council Chambers at 6 p.m. This meeting is part of the outreach phase for the approved one-year pilot program that was presented to the City Council on July 15th, 2024. The public safety technology initiatives include the real-time watch center, fixed cameras, and the use of drones as first responders. In partnership with the West Hollywood Sheriff Station, the city is working towards implementing these technologies and having them fully operational by the end of the first quarter of 2025. We will continue to provide regular updates to the community as we move forward. At the town hall, we will share the station orders related to the West Hollywood Sheriff Station, which will serve as the guiding policy for the use of these technologies. We'll also provide information about what these technologies are and how they will be provided and utilized. There will also be an opportunity to ask questions. Please join us at the Town Hall on December 17th at 6 p.m. here in Council Chambers. If you have any questions, please email us at safety@weho.org. On January 21st, 2025, we will present the city's semi-annual community safety update at the City Council meeting. The presentation will include public safety activities from the Community Safety Department, including data from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Los Angeles County Fire Department, block-by-block security ambassador program, and the city's Neighborhood and Business Safety Division. This presentation will also include an update on the public safety technology items, as well as the presentation of the Community Safety Officer Program. The Community Safety Officer Program supports and enhances the services provided by sworn law enforcement officers to increase the safety and well-being of the communities they serve. Community safety officers would be a dedicated team of unarmed officers trained to respond to non-emergency calls and complete reports on their own. This concludes the updates from the Public Safety Division. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving along, our next item on our agenda is our second round of public comments. Commission Secretary, do we have any speakers at this time?
Doesn't look like we have any speakers.
Do we have anyone in Zoom?
We have no Zoom callers.
Great, thank you. Next item on our agenda is going to be commissioner comments. Do any commissioners have any comments at this time? Commissioner Nickel?
So I did attend the virtual public safety technology town hall, which was really great, and I encourage everyone to come out on the 17th here to participate in the live one. The active shooter training I attended as well. It was really informative, and I believe the last one was 2 years ago because I missed it. I was out of town, so maybe that's something that we could do a little more often. It was empowering to learn all that we learned. And I will say that I did have the opportunity to meet the new DA, Nathan Hochman, and have a conversation with him at ALAD's headquarters last week. And other than that, just happy holidays to everyone.
Any other comments? Commissioner Post?
Yeah, this was one just came up in conversations with residents. I know it was an interesting fact that I learned recently that while we have 35,000 some residents, on the weekends we can balloon up to over 100,000. And I just saw a great piece and studies around what some cities are doing, which is a director of nightlife or a nightlife czar or even nightmare, as they call them, tons of different titles. But I think it's just something that I would be interested to see if the city has thought about or looked into as a position, as I think it could benefit us specifically as a city on the weekends that grows to such magnitude and has so many issues that arise during that time. It's just a position that I've seen help with some of those things, and it I think covers everything from transportation for support for evening workers all the way through public safety. So just a suggestion that I offer to the Community Safety Department.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Hallman?
Thank you, Chair. On 11/26, I attended the Cynthia Sunset Neighborhood Watch meeting that was upstairs at the Arc. I want to thank Wendy Goldman for inviting me. She is the Neighborhood Watch captain. Obviously, there have been a rash of break-ins in that area, and residents were quite frustrated. I just want to remind everyone that we really have to work together. We need to support one another. We need to stop attacking one another. We are all responsible for our safety. It is no particular agency's responsibility. It's our collective responsibility. So I just hope we can do better because as we go into 2025, we don't know what's coming our way. So as a city, we need to be strong. And I also want to wish everyone an amazing and healthy and happy holiday.
Any other commissioner comments? I would just like to thank our fire department, our sheriff's department, and our block-by-block ambassadors for everything that you guys do. Honestly, truly, thank you very much. You know, it's not an easy job. You know, West Hollywood is only a 1.9-mile city, but within those 1.9 miles, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And, you know, being from New York originally and being a transplant here in West Hollywood, I wouldn't change that for the world. I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday and a very healthy and prosperous new year. If there are no other commissioner comments, the Public Safety Commission will adjourn to the next regularly scheduled meeting on Monday, January 27th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the West Hollywood Park Public Meeting Room, Council Chambers. Happy holidays.
Ways in which to engage with the project is through the website, which is called Engage WeHo, which you can leave insights about the plan even if you can't be here. But we are going to try to make sure that we have enough events to engage a variety of different folks.
Really looking forward to seeing all of those amazing, diverse opinions come about into a really streamlined document that will help us